Um, Great to have you here on the talk. We had just a really brief chat beforehand. As I said, I'm a huge fan of your work, so it's really exciting for me personally as well. We realized that we have a few friends or acquaintances based in, well, you know, all over the world. I think Asger, he's from Denmark. I think same is Peter Funch, I guess. Yeah, who's now living in Berlin. So yeah, so it's a small world in the end. And yeah, I'm going to hand this over now to you. Nice to have you here, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. All right, is that working?
Yeah, it's great.
Cool. And I'm going to take my video off because I don't like looking at myself while I'm talking. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. My name's Tim Barber. I wanted to start this by sharing. I'm basically going to just show you guys a very large slideshow of pictures from my life, my career, my past, my present. And I like to start with this series of slides. These are actually photos that my parents took. And I like to start with these because I grew up, these are shot on slide film. My parents lived in northern British Columbia before I was born. And they took all these photos. And as I was growing up as a little kid, they would show us, me and my sister, these slides and tell us stories. And you know, it was just the kind of thing we did over and over again as I was growing up, and they really kind of ingrained themselves into my mind and memory and brain. And now looking back, I really think that they kind of were the foundation, the foundational kind of building blocks for my relationship to photography, my understanding of photographs and what they can do, my kind of appreciation for photos' abilities to tell stories and build narratives. And so anyway, yeah, these are some of those pictures, very kind of personal and diaristic, which is also something I kind of learned from them and picked up from them for my own work. And yeah, both my parents were photographers. We had a lot of you know, photo books and art books in the house too growing up. So from a young age, I was always pretty interested in looking at them. And in early high school, I started taking photo classes in ninth grade, and took classes all through high school and kind of made up my own curriculum after I had taken all the available courses. I spent a lot of time in the darkroom back then, a lot of, you know, experimenting and just figuring stuff out. Let me skip ahead to the high school stuff. So this is like my earliest, this is actually the first photo ever exhibited in like the hallway of my high school. I think it was shot on infrared film, which is weird kind of film that looks strange. And I was really into skateboarding and snowboarding and, you know, music photography. That was kind of my main stuff that I looked at. And also, like I said, photo books that my parents had. And also like obvious things like National Geographic and you know, old school kind of legendary guys like Robert Frank and Lee Friedlander, William Eggleston, and also people like Larry Clark and Spike Jones, who even then I was like, you know, kind of aware of through their films and music videos and things. So these are all just early photos from high school. Just like to take pictures of my friends and, you know, go out on adventures and take photos, mostly black and white, but some color stuff even then. And obviously, yeah, skateboarding was a huge influence. I always think it's interesting. Skateboarding is, I think so many people got their start because of skateboarding, because it's such a photographic sport, like unlike, I mean, all sports are photographed, but there's a creativity to how skateboarding is photographed that I think lends itself to, you know, just a more artistic approach. And I think that really was a big kind of gateway for me to try and make interesting photographs of, you know, the adventures I was going on with my friends. Yeah, this is just old stuff. I did a lot of driving around, a lot of road trips across the country.
Can I ask
yeah, please, go ahead.
where were you based at that time?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I grew up in Western Massachusetts, a town called Amherst. It's like a little college town.
Was that like in your, what you would maybe call like your formative years when it comes to photography education?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and then after high school, I took a couple of years off before going to college, and I lived in Vermont, which is just north of Massachusetts, and that's where some of these photos are from as well. Then I moved. Then after that 2-year break, I decided to apply to art school, and I got into an art school in Vancouver called Emily Carr. This is, I think, a photo from the flight over there. That's Mount Rainier, I believe, in the background. And yeah, so I went and started studying photography again in Vancouver. It was sorry, it was kind of rough for me in school. I think I had kind of false assumptions about what it was going to be like, and it was kind of like hard and disappointing, I think, a little bit for me going to art school. But the thing that I look back on now and appreciate about it is how much time I had to kind of experiment and just waste time and just do weird stuff and use weird cameras and try things and just make messes and stuff. And you know, I think that's the kind of most important, valuable thing about going to school is having that time to just mess around and try stuff. Like, and these are some examples of some of that weird experimental stuff that I was doing. Just, you know, trying weird cameras and just shooting tons of film. And this was shot on a half frame camera that I found somewhere. And you know, I took all these photos and then I made it into a flip book. I was experimenting with like medium format cameras and double exposures and old Polaroid cameras and yeah, you know, high speed film and just all kinds of stuff, just trying all kinds of different things. And the other thing that happened during my time there was I kind of learned to appreciate and be interested in the idea of organizing and curating other people's work, like my fellow students' work. And this is actually the flyer for the first show that I ever curated. Me and my friend put together, and we held it at his loft space. And what we did was invite like basically the whole school to submit photo booth strips for this show. There was a photo booth, like an actual old school photo booth that printed real photo prints, not a digital one, in the train yard in Vancouver. So we got everyone to go there, and we ended up getting hundreds of submissions, like just incredible, huge range of stuff and really creative, really cool responses from everybody. And we put on this big show. And this is a picture from the opening. And it was really cool and really inspiring, and that kind of like lit this interest in me of continuing to do that, which I'll get to kind of later on, is something that I continued to work on later. These are just photos from that time period, from being in school. I also started exhibiting my work in the gallery at school and in other little galleries around, little student shows and stuff. And that again kind of changes the way you think about what you're doing, and thinking about how you're going to present stuff, and how you can build these like little mini bodies of work, and how presenting them and organizing them, laying them out, kind of all of these things I think are kind of part of the practice of photography. And these are things that I learned during this time period.
And Tim, can I ask I would say like your main body of work, what you're known for nowadays, can probably be described as lifestyle photography, which is, for me at least personally, it's quite a new phenomenon. It takes some parts of street photography. For example, like the road trip is a really important part, I would say, like of or like almost like a subgenre maybe of lifestyle photography.
Yeah.
But it also incorporates things like fashion, portraiture. Someone who's just in general just looking really gorgeous. It almost looks as if you created or built a foundation for lifestyle photography, or maybe for your later specialization in lifestyle photography. Were you aware of, at that time, that this is going to lead to something, or was it more carefree and you just photographed whatever you were interested in?
Yeah, I think it was pretty carefree. I did not know what I was doing or where I was going with it. Like I said, I think the magazine stuff, like looking at skate magazines, I think was probably the most, like that's probably what I thought of as successful, was like getting a photo in a skate magazine. I wasn't really aware of like the art world necessarily, or the commercial photography world, or the fashion world, or anything like that. I was at least at this stage in my life, I was pretty unaware of all those things, and just, yeah, I don't think I had a plan. But I do think, yeah, I think that I was kind of riding a wave of people who were similarly influenced to me, who then ended up becoming like the photographers of their day, in the 2000s, who had all kind of grown up with the same influences, which led to what you're talking about. I think the kind of rise of that maybe more intimate style of lifestyle photography / diaristic documentary style photography, like becoming kind of mainstream. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, here's another early installation of some of my work, my first like big body of color work that I did, again on a road trip I did with my friends. And this is also the first book it was this work, and it's the first book I published, self-published. I've kind of handmade all these books. And again, just like another kind of building block, I learned then about like not just taking photos, but like what to do with them afterwards, like how to make sense of them, how to package them, how to present them to the world in like a meaningful way. And I always think that the book is kind of the ultimate kind of finished product of photography, other than like a print on your wall, of course. But a book is kind of the ultimate goal. Again, just more early photos from that era, more installation shots. And then on my senior year, my senior project, I put on my own show. Basically, I haggled with some real estate people and got this huge space donated to me for the use of it donated to me for this exhibition that I did in an old mall in Vancouver, and put on this big show, and, which was pretty fun. While I was still in school, all of these kind of chapters in my life kind of overlap weirdly, so it's not exactly chronological, but like while I was still in school, I was coming to New York. While I was still in school in Vancouver, I was coming to New York in the summers, and then I think my junior year, I did a semester, like a work study semester in New York, which was in 2001, and was there for the 9/11 attacks, which this is a photo of. And I was working during that work study, I was working for assisting these two photographers who are still life photographers, Gentle and Hyers, they're called, who I'm still close with today. And that was kind of the beginning of my relationship with New York, beginning of my like broader understanding of photography being a career, being a potential future, something I could do, and also meeting and learning about other photographers in New York. I met Ryan McGinley around this time, and we became friends, and he introduced me to the editor at Vice magazine, Jesse Pearson, at the time, and we started, having a kind of working relationship. And then when I graduated, after I graduated, these are my photos, early photos of Ryan from that period. When I graduated, I moved to New York and started working at Vice as a photo editor there, which was kind of Ryan had that job before me, and he kind of passed it on to me. This is my first cover, my first Vice cover. Adventures with Ryan. I did a lot of traveling and working with Ryan in those early years, kind of assisting him, kind of just being his friend and helping, and being in photos as well, and just being his driver, being whatever. We traveled all over the place. It was great. This photo, and then the photo that's on his wall here on the right is from the same trip. Just more photos from that era, the early New York time.
But most of them really have a slight surreal edge to them, as a lot of classic street photography actually has. Even if you look back at guys like Cartier-Bresson, I mean, they're actually trained surrealists. And for example, let's say like those snogging couples on this boat, and this kind of rescue boat here is just like hanging there, really just diagonal. So everything seems to be just wobbling right and left, and there's something slightly excessive about this picture, or like a guy lying in bed and there's this third hand, and you just simply don't know where the third hand actually comes from, and who he's actually hanging out with. Man, woman, do they know each other? How did they actually end up? I mean, he looks quite in bits, really, as if he maybe had a really intense, like last night, maybe a few, too many drinks. You don't really quite know, how this, where this relationship actually comes from. Are you aware of those elements when you take those pictures, or do you just feel it? Are you just in the moment?
I don't think you can be aware of them. I mean, I think you could be like maybe subconsciously aware of them. I think, you know, you take so many photos and you find things in the edit. But I appreciate what you're saying. I think like that surrealism really speaks to me. I think like a different word for it is um, like a kind of mysterious narrative. Like you look at it and it's like it implies. I always am drawn to photos and try and make photos. I think that kind of imply a bigger story than what they're than you know than a first read will tell you. Like it's not that you don't get all the information all at once. Like you're kind of drawn into it, and then it's instead of it's kind of asking more questions than it's answering a lot of the time. um, that's definitely something I'm really interested in and drawn to, like a kind of subliminal mystery or yeah yeah, like even this one, the 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 guy is kind of mimicked on his by this skeleton on his skateboard.
Mm.
Yeah, this is pretty surreal too, I guess.
Indeed.
So yeah, I worked at Vice for a couple years, for 2 years, 2003 to 2005, as a photo editor. I didn't work in the office. I was like kind of I forget what the photo editor at large or whatever. I worked from home and I did a lot of, you know, running around, and this is still early days internet wise. Like we were just starting to figure out the power of the internet, and you know, Vice barely, like the website was just getting built. um, we were just starting to learn how to use the web to like find people and network and find photographers. So that was really a great couple of years for me to like be in New York and have that job and have it be this introduction to photography and to the city, um, uh, in those first couple of years. These are some spreads. These are I did a couple. They do an annual photo issue, and I did two of them while I was there. And this is from the last one that I did, where this is when I really started like maximizing my reach as far as like how many people could I find to send in photos. And I was really about this kind of maximalist, like just get as many submissions as possible and try and make sense of them and try and find all these just strange and bizarre and mysterious and funny and goofy moments, and then make some kind of sense of them. And this, again, I'm kind of telling all of this because it all kind of leads to like the next chapter in my life, which is building this website called tinyvices. I had been I had been like heavily influenced by my friend Terrence Coe, who had actually gone to school with in Vancouver, who then moved to New York, I think a year before me. And he ran this website called Asian Punk Boy, that was kind of a kind of blog, art blog essentially. And you know, he showcased his own work and he showcased other people's work that he liked. So I was really kind of inspired by that, and also my friend Patrick O'Dell at the time was running this photo blog called Epically Latered, which he's a skate photographer, lifestyle photographer as well, and it was kind of his photo blog thing, and he actually taught me how to build it. We used Netscape Navigator to build our websites back then. we did not know how to code or do anything like that, but we figured it out. Also, my friend Amy Kellner ran a similar blog, photo blog, diaristic photo blog. And again, it's kind of annoying or cliche to keep pointing it out, but this is early internet days. This is pre-Facebook, pre-social media. We didn't, making a photo blog was like, it was like making your own DIY Instagram page. And people would have to go online and type in your URL to go see your photos. So because through those influences, I decided to make a website. It was kind of an offshoot of what I was doing at the magazine. I was seeing so much work that I thought was interesting that didn't end up having a place in the magazine. So I thought I would start this photo blog where I could showcase things that I was finding that I was interested in, and not just through the magazine, but also through like, all my friends I had gone to school with and just people I was meeting in the city. So I started this website called tinyvices. I started sharing portfolios of people's work and portfolios of my own work, and just kind of photo blog stuff. And it just kind of exploded over the course of a few years. I started getting submissions from artists and photographers all over the world. And it just grew and grew and became kind of made a life of its own. And shortly after I started the website, I stopped working at the magazine. So it kind of became its own independent thing. And sorry, let me just check something. It was a place for me to showcase, tons of different photographers' work that I liked, and not just photography, but drawing and painting and collage and whatever. I was pretty open. It was mostly photography though. And then through this, I started getting asked to curate exhibitions based on the collections that I was showcasing on the website. Here's just a little quick sneak peek into how many pictures I was looking at back then. It was just insane. I was just completely buried in photographs. And this is a picture of my desk. This is actually the picture of my desk at the time, and this was the invite to the first tinyvices exhibition that I did in New York at Spencer Brownstone Gallery. And that kind of was a big kind of sea change moment, because it took this kind of flat digital web experience and made it brought it out into the real world. And I started touring this show all over the place, and I would do these huge complicated installations that, again, it's funny, I'm not this was before Google image search too, or maybe like around the same time that Google image search started. And I always thought it was funny that my installations ended up looking like the Google image search page. Mm-hmm. There's some kind of kismet happening there, like and this was the show went to Tokyo. This was the installation in Tokyo. Went to some colleges. This is in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Mexico City. Went to London, St. Louis, Missouri, Colette in Paris. This was, I also started around this time, a kind of short-lived book imprint. I was trying to, again, kind of bring the work out of the computer and make things out of it. And I made a bunch of books with different people. This was one of them, called Various Photographs, that just had, you know, I can't remember how many, well over 100 different photographers. And just, again, it's kind of like a photo blog or an Instagram feed turned into a book, pre-Instagram. And this was a installation of that collection that I did for the first annual New York Photo Festival. This was more of the books that I published, the TV books it was called. And these were made with like a print-on-demand book printing service, so they barely existed. They only existed if somebody bought one, so they're very rare now. This is some exhibitions I did kind of around those books. This one's in LA. This one is in I did a couple in LA and one in New York. And I also curated a series of artist monographs for the Aperture Foundation, which was really cool. That was kind of like an elevated version of the scrappy books that I was making. And we also made an app for tinyvices. I met some young developers who were excited to help me. This is, again, very early days, you can see from the iPhone. And they wanted to kind of see if we could make an app out of it, so we did, which was a cool kind of experiment. And then back to my own work, and you know, all this time through all the tinyvices stuff, I was still taking photos of my own and working as a photographer. I started doing more fashion stuff. I started getting asked to do commercial stuff and catalog stuff. This is a kind of personal project I did, but it was kind of in collaboration with a friend of mine who was a hairstylist who did all the hair. And in 2010, I published my first kind of big photo book. Wow, this slide is really blurry. Sorry about that. My first kind of big photo book called Untitled Photographs, with a gallery called Oh Wow that was based in Miami at the time. They're now in LA and under a different name, but so we did a book and we did a big exhibition of that work. And this is, again, kind of, these all overlap, but this is some of the first commercial work that I was asked to do. This is from I did a bunch of catalogs for Urban Outfitters. That was kind of one of my first repeating really great clients that I got to do some fun work with. Coolest thing about that, well, there was lots of cool things, but it was all, I got to shoot all on film, which is pretty unheard of at this point, but back then we still got to do it. It was really cool. Travel all over and shoot film.
Can I pass on a question from Katerina? She asked about the book.
Sure.
Maybe that might need some clarification. She says, for the book, did you decide to do it or were you approached by him? Could you, what do you mean with him, Katerina?
Or which book?
Yeah, that's right. Which book and for him, for whom? Maybe Katerina, maybe you can update it. The last book showed.
This one. I think that they
Yeah.
asked me. I mean, I can't remember exactly how it went. I think that they asked. It was probably just a conversation I had. I was friends with the gallery director, and it was just from a conversation we had. We decided to do it, and then from the book came the show. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if that's a boring answer.
No. You already said things.
Yeah, I don't even really remember. So yeah, this is all catalog stuff.
Yeah. So these are all commissions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because they really look like your personal work or like early work. So yeah, they really picked up on your natural style, on your on your house style, if you want to say that. And it's interesting that very often clients, their main um, their main goal might be to show maybe like their clothes in the most the largest, most favorable way, to ultimately sell them. But this is really like early lifestyle photography, where the clothes is rather like a small element in a larger narrative that rather seems to be more about a lifestyle, a certain way to live your life. Was it, did they approach you just like that, or was it, I don't know, is there a lot of like did you have to break a lot of like conventions? Was there a lot of like discussions going on behind the scenes, or did they just say like, well, Tim, you just do whatever you like. You've got a bunch of clothes and a budget for a model. How does something like this actually? How does it happen? How do you produce?
Well, the key thing to remember is I'm showing you my favorite pictures from this. So there was definitely a lot of photos that were more clothes oriented, and there was definitely a lot of conversations about that at the time. I mean, what was so great about the fashion editors and directors that I was working with there at the time was they really wanted to make photos like this. Like they were really excited to make photos that kind of were less product focused and more lifestyle focused. But at the end of the day, they still needed to show, the clothes. So I'm showing you my favorite pictures from them, and there was definitely a lot of more just straightforward catalog photos as well. So it's always a balance, and there's probably photos in here that they didn't even use, that I ended up having for my portfolio. And then also, in addition to the fashion clients and commercial clients, I was starting to do more editorial stuff, more portraiture for magazines. This Chloe Sevigny, Rel, Willem Dafoe. Didn't include very much studio work in this slideshow. I guess just, I don't know why, but that's a whole nother conversation, I guess. Studio is a whole nother world. Lou Reed right before he passed away. And on the left, there's an artist named Bill Saylor. Aurel Schmidt, she's a painter, artist. Mark Borthwick, the photographer. Mark Gonzalez. It's Alexander Skarsgård on the left and Terrence Coe on the right. Robert Pattinson. This was, I got to shoot a couple days shooting stills on the set of the movie Good Time by the Safdie brothers, which was pretty cool experience.
Mhm. Can I ask Tim?
Yeah.
So what I find really remarkable here is that you, as I mentioned before, that you carry over the style of your early years, which is um, defined by friendships and community and hanging out and skateboarding and your friends and your community.
Mm-hmm.
So photography obviously was a part of this lifestyle. It was really like embedded, and it looks very, very natural. And the what's really remarkable here is that when you then get commissioned, for example, for those editorials, you manage to, and I think ultimately really that is what's so I think outstanding about your work is that you manage to bring the same vibe into a commission, for example, of someone with you have probably never met before,
Mm.
like Chloe Sauvigny. And there are some pictures that look very intimate. I mean, even sometimes, people are wearing very little, or sometimes there's this kind of moment where you feel like there's this moment
Like
when,
this one.
well, yes, for example,
these,
or there's this
these
moment.
guys were my friends, so that's why I was able to get
Mm,
such an intimate
yeah.
photo. But yeah, sometimes they're not. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, yeah. But how do you do this? I mean, let's say like, if you meet Chloe, let's say, and you say like, oh, Chloe, my name is Tim, and can you get half undressed basically, or just in your top? I don't, you know what I mean. So how do you do this?
um, well, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. There's not like a single answer to that. It's just about creating a comfortable environment. There's oftentimes a lot of other people around. There's a crew, there's assistants, there's stylists, there's hair and makeup, um, it's just about creating an environment where people feel comfortable. When you do get to shoot film, I think that that's weirdly helpful because nobody can see what's going on. I think that makes people kind of less self-conscious in a weird way. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just about making people feel comfortable. And there's not a single answer to how to do that. It's like, you know, you gotta, I think, talking a lot, getting to know each other as much as possible, just getting comfortable with each other, um, trying not to be too overbearing with the camera, um, putting on good music, that helps. There's some little tricks like that, um, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't always work either. Again, I'm showing you the photos that I like and that worked, that I think worked anyway. Uh, there's there's a lot of failures out there, too. So um,
The
it, it has it has a lot to do with the people that you're photographing too. Some people are really cool and open and relaxed, and um, they understand that what you're doing is a collaboration. That uh, and that makes it a lot easier and more fun.
Mm. We've got Marcella who asks, I imagine that at the beginning of your career, you used analog cameras. Now,
Mhm.
suppose you started using digital cameras when they came up. Any major differences in your experience and outcome of your shots?
Yes, for sure, that is true, and uh, it definitely took me a while to adjust, and to learn, how to use the digital SLRs and how to process the photos to make them look, how I wanted them to look. Um, I don't have a very good answer though. Like I don't. It's a complicated process, and it's something I'm still learning. I mean, I think we're all still learning, and I'm still shooting film too, so it's still like a back and forth, and um, I still shoot film when I can. I'm still learning about digital cameras and how to make them. I feel like I'm still getting better at that. Like a lot of it, to be honest, has to do with like working with the right retouchers too. Like learning to ask for help when you need to. When you need to is a good skill.
I know, for example, some photographers, and it's really interesting that you mentioned this. One of the differences between film and digital is that digital photography, you have an immediate feedback. So you can take a shot and then you can.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, then you can review it. Whereas
it's a bummer. Yeah, sometimes it's really helpful. I think in the studio it's good when you're trying to be really specific, and obviously if you're building light, then you kind of need to be able to see what you're doing. But yeah, in terms of like that feedback loop of people looking over your shoulder and seeing what's happening and then adjusting based on that, and it kind of takes something away from the moment and from being in the moment. Yeah, it's an annoying hurdle.
Yeah, I know a lot of photographers nowadays who refuse to shoot tethered because they don't want the team or the client to have direct access to every single frame that they're shooting. How about you? Do you shoot tethered or do you shoot directly like on the card? Do you rather keep this little screen like guarded, or how do you deal with that if you shoot digital?
Yeah, I try not to shoot tethered if possible. Sometimes the client needs it to happen, so you do what you need to do. But yeah, I much prefer to not shoot tethered. It's just like, I mean, it's corny, but it's like nobody likes to work with people watching them. It's like, imagine like painting a painting with like an audience who are like critiquing every move you make. It's like a very weird process. But again, I mean, it's what you have to kind of get used to, and you have to be adaptable and be able to work with that kind of pressure and strain. If you want to do this for a job, like that's the job of it. It can't all be fun and creative. Sometimes it has to be work. One of my longest running clients, no pun intended, is Nike. This is some of my first work I did for them. We shot this project called Bridge Runners. So it was like a crew of New York non-pro athletes who ran together and ran over the bridges. We did this kind of photo editorial story about them, and that led to a whole bunch of shoots that I did with Nike some of my favorite jobs that I've done. This is all different Nike shoots that I've done. Mostly all on film, I think. Oh, the skateboarding stuff is not, but this is all film. This is for Nike skateboarding.
And if you shoot personal work, is it always film, or do you sometimes swap to digital?
Yeah, I swap around. I prefer film kind of at the, like, if I had to choose, but I think sometimes you need the convenience of whatever's at reach. I've heard the quote, like, the best camera is the one you have with you. It doesn't really matter what it is, or it shouldn't. So whatever is convenient, like whatever works in the moment, can can work. I mean, I use my iPhone a lot as a camera, and I don't think there's anything weird or wrong about that. I think it's a great camera. I always think it's weird that we talk about, like, the vocabulary around it is like, you refer to it as an iPhone picture. Like, why is it not a picture? Like, it's just a photo. Like, it's a camera that takes pictures. It's weird that we have the stigma around it, I guess because it's a phone, but I think that's something we'll probably grow out of. And this is just a selection of some fashion stuff, different fashion stories. Again, I think this is all film. Yeah, this is all film.
Were those editorials?
Yeah, yeah, for a magazine called Muse.
When you do personal work, I mean, obviously here there are stylists and hair makeup artists involved, and I assume a lot of those models, they're probably like models from fashion model agencies. How important for you when you do personal work, do you think styling and hair makeup is? Does it play a role for you?
Sorry, for personal work?
Yeah, that's right. For personal work, if you shoot that, do you collaborate then with stylists and hair makeup artists, or do you just shoot?
Yeah, I mean, I love collaborating with stylists and hair and makeup artists for fashion shoots. But for like personal work or like low key portraiture or whatever, I always would prefer to do it au naturel. I mean, it depends on the subject too. I mean, whatever makes the person most comfortable, if they want to include that aspect, then that's fine. But yeah, normally I prefer to just work as minimally as possible. But for fashion stuff, that is what it is. I mean, it is a collaboration between you and the stylist and hair and makeup artist. And again, not in chronological order, but this, I just figured I could show you guys the other books that I've made and kind of some highlights from those books. This one's called Welcome to Earth. So each of these books kind of was like a body of work and ended up as an exhibition that may or may not have traveled around a bit.
When you work on those books, do you give yourself a certain theme, title, maybe working title, or how would you edit them together?
I don't really work thematically. I mean, I think that themes kind of come out of the edits. The really it's just like blocks of time. It's like a few years go by and you're like, okay, it's time to figure out a book, like, and you look through what you have and try and make sense of it. And I see it kind of like, this is like corny or whatever, but it's kind of like poetry. It's kind of like writing a book of poetry. You're like writing notes and writing bits of poems and writing poems, and then eventually you're like, okay, I think this is enough to put into a book, and then you edit it and sequence it and figure it out. And that's the best analogy that I can think of. It's but contrary to that, this book was a commission actually from a Japanese fashion brand, and I think that they had seen that last book that I just showed and asked me basically if I could make a book with them with their clothing in a kind of hands-off way where they they just supplied me the clothing, asked me to do all the casting, and basically did it without. I think we had a stylist for some of it, and most of it was just freestyle, just working with friends. And this book is called Relations. And this was some installation shots of the exhibition that went with the book. And then kind of last installment of the personal work is this thing I've been working on the past few years. I've been making essentially their blueprints, their cyanotypes, mostly of iPhone pictures, actually. I just did it. I called them iPhone pictures. They're pictures I took with my iPhone. And yeah, so I've been doing this ongoing series of making these cyanotypes from those photos.
Do you make them yourself?
I do. It's like a machine. I work in this lab in the city, and they have a machine that makes them. It's a pretty rudimentary process. It's a positive to positive contact print process. Mm-hmm. And you basically just feed it through this machine, and it comes out the other side. And there's a couple little knobs to make adjustments, but it's pretty simple. It's like the earliest photocopy machine, basically. But I really love the quality that, again, kind of like what you're saying at the beginning, there's like, I mean, this is very literal abstraction, and kind of surrealism to these that I like. This is a exhibition I did with Agnes B in the city. And this is the second book. Another exhibition of them, this one in Tokyo. And then, yeah, the last thing, this is from about a year ago, in March of 2020. I launched this print fundraising platform kind of in response to the pandemic, to try and raise money to help, causes that were helping people because of the pandemic. I worked with a whole list of really amazing artists and created a website that sold editioned prints from all these different artists. And we raised over 100 grand in a couple months, which was really cool. This is the work.
Is it going to go into a book, Tim?
I never even thought of that. I should make this a book. That would be cool. Yeah, I hadn't planned on it. It's still like I did it for a few months. It was super successful and fun. It was also really hard and really overwhelming. Like the amount of just the shipping and receiving and all that stuff that was involved was really complicated, and so I could only do it for a few months before I had to put it on pause. But I want to get it going again, and yeah, it's definitely something I'm going to keep doing. And that's it. That's my life.
Amazing, Tim. Thank you so much. Oh, that was really quick. I thought when you sent me the presentation, the PDF, which contains 218 pages. So this is going to be hours and hours, but
sorry.
you're really stepping onto the accelerator here. I definitely have a few questions to start with. I would like to ask you about the relationship, if that still occurs, your relationship between personal work and commissions, because obviously you kind of define the type of commissions you're going to get through your personal work, or at least in early parts of your career. I assume like maybe someone who's really, really established and who shoots a lot of commissions. And those commissions are just like his or her kind of style. Then maybe you can scale down your personal work. But how would you rate this? Do you still shoot a lot of personal work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does it look like? What are you working on at the moment, for example?
Well, I'm actually just finished another whole set of those blueprints that I'm making a book of. It's kind of different, I guess. It's a lot. I've been splitting my time between the city and upstate New York. And so a lot of the new photos are like nature photos, actually, like more landscapes and nature and plants and animals, which I guess is kind of different. Although, you know, I've always taken photos like that. I guess it's just this is maybe more concentrated on that. But yeah, I think still kind of the same. I mean, I kind of like, I mean, you even said it earlier, like I kind of have just always been doing the same thing my whole life. I think the kind of foundational aesthetics that I'm interested in are still with me. I'm still, yeah, does that answer? I don't know.
Yeah, completely. Another one is, how would you rate the importance of social media in your work? Is that something that you pay a lot of attention to, or is that just like a little like on the sideline?
Unfortunately, I think it's pretty important. Yeah, I don't know. I have a weird relationship to it. I think because I worked so hard on those websites earlier in my life, and then they were kind of replaced by social media. I think that was always kind of disappointing to me. I think it's great and beautiful, but there's something kind of overwhelming about it, I guess. Um, and like the attention span or lack of attention span because of it, I think is rough. But I think it is still, I mean, it's obviously it's the way we all communicate with each other now. So it's important to stay somewhat involved in it. I try and post something every day on Instagram, just as kind of an assignment to myself, just to stay involved. Because otherwise, I think I would not, you know, I would I'd rather not think about it every day, but I do think it's important. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. We've got Katerina asking to go back to the beginning of the presentation. She asked about I think about the very first exhibition. I don't know if you remember this. I think it was the first exhibition place that you showed, and she asked how you got involved with your first exhibition. If you got it for free or if you had to pay for the first exhibition.
Oh, for the senior exhibition?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that it's kind of a cool story actually. There was a collector in Vancouver who started to buy some of my work, and he was a real estate guy, like a big wig real estate guy in Vancouver. He still is. And I told him what I wanted to do, that I wanted to put on this show. And he knew about this space in this mall that he had, I don't know if he owned it, but he had sway over it, you know, and he basically he donated it to me for the time for the show. And it was free to use. I had to build out the gallery. Like, we built a bunch of walls and installed lighting and everything. So I think I had to pay for that stuff, but you know, it was partially free, partially not. But it was, you know, it was my big senior project, so it was worth it.
Good, yeah, yeah. Katarina says, pretty good deal. Good. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to wish you a lovely Friday evening. So I know it's a little bit earlier in New York, so you still have to, you know, bridge a few hours until you're ready for your Friday evening pint, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's time for us here in London, definitely. Nice to meet you, Tim.
Yeah, you
Thank you
too.
so much for this fantastic talk. Everybody else, you can watch this talk, the recording of this talk, later on. So as I said at the beginning, it usually takes us 2 or 3 weeks to upload this on our webpage. And if you go to our webpage, www.lrp.co.uk, and then have a look at the events and in the talk section. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Stay safe and healthy. That goes to you, Tim, and everybody else here. And hope to see you soon, everyone. Cheers. See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. See
Cheers.
ya.